My daughter, Claire, found me in the kitchen, just as I was pulling the perfect Thanksgiving turkey from the oven. The skin was a deep, golden brown, the aroma of sage and rosemary a warm hug in the air. I'd been awake since dawn for this moment. She wouldn't meet my eyes. She focused on a spot on the wall just over my shoulder. "Mom," she said, her voice dropping to that quiet, reasonable tone she uses when she's about to ask for the impossible. "The dining room is just packed. Mark's boss is here. We need your chair." She paused, letting the words hang in the air between us. Then she pointed towards the kitchen counter. "Could you do me a huge favor and just make yourself a plate here? Once everyone has theirs, it would help so much." And something inside me didn't just crack, it shattered. It wasn't one brutal word like scraps. It was worse. It was the calm, logical dismissal, the request for me to participate in my own erasure, wrapped in the sweet paper of a huge favor. I looked at the 20-pound turkey I had spent 2 days preparing. I looked at the dining room, at the chair where I was supposed to sit. Then, without a word, I picked up the roasting pan, still searing hot, and I walked out the front door. No one followed me. I didn't even hear a gasp, just the clink of silverware and the sound of my son-in-law laughing at a joke. The November air was sharp on my cheeks. The pan was heavy, the heat burning through my oven mitts, but I didn't stop. I walked to the end of the block, to the small lakeside cottage I still owned, carrying the turkey like the heart I had just ripped out of their celebration. Inside, everything smelled of cedar and memory. Claire had convinced me to move in with her last year. "We'll take care of you, Mom," she'd said. I should have known better. Being taken care of is just a polite term for being put away. I placed the turkey on my kitchen counter. The silence was absolute. No voices, no screens, no one asking for more gravy. Just me. I made myself a plate, one of the old ones with blue flowers around the rim. I carved the best part of the breast, spooned the rich drippings over it, and sat at my own table. I ate slowly. The meat was perfect, and for the first time in years, I tasted every single bite. Navi Baluchi, Part 1. My daughter, Claire, walked into the kitchen, her movements sharp and efficient. She didn't look at me. She didn't look at the golden brown turkey I had just pulled from the oven. She looked at a spot on the wall just over my shoulder. "Mom," she said, her voice flat. "Matter of fact, it's a full house. You'll eat after the guests are served." And just like that, the world went silent. It wasn't a sad silence. It was cold, clear, final. The kind of silence that falls after a doctor says, "There's nothing more we can do." The warmth from the oven, the fragrant steam rising from the bird, none of it could touch me. 10 hours. I'd been on my feet for 10 hours. Since 4 a.m., when my old bones protested the cold floorboards, I had been brining, seasoning, stuffing. All for this. To be told to wait for the leftovers. To be informed, not asked, that I was no longer part of the full house, just the staff that catered it. I let my gaze drift past her, into the dining room. I could see them all. My son-in-law, Mark, raising a glass to his boss, a man with a pink, fleshy face. Their friends, all laughing. And the empty chair at the end of the table, the one that was supposed to be mine. It was a perfect picture, a party I had created but was not invited to. My mother's voice echoed in my head, a memory from decades ago. "You put your love into the food, Maggie. That's how they know they're home." But this wasn't home anymore. This was a venue, and I was the help. I looked back at the turkey I had cooked for 10 hours. Its skin, a shield of crisp perfection, seemed to mock me. Then I looked at my daughter. She had already turned away, busy rearranging wine glasses, her back to me, as if our conversation was already over, already forgotten. She was wrong. It wasn't over. It was just beginning. Then I put on my oven mitts, the old faded ones with the burn mark from that Christmas Eve in '98. I slid my hands under the searing hot roasting pan. The weight of it was familiar, solid. I lifted it from the counter. The shift in weight made Claire turn around, an annoyed flicker in her eyes, probably thinking I was just moving it to the carving board. But I didn't turn towards the dining room. I turned towards the front door. I walked past her. Her mouth opened slightly, a small O of confusion, but no words came out. I walked through the living room, past the perfectly arranged furniture, past the family photos on the mantel photos I was in, but always on the edge, slightly out of focus. No one followed me. No one called my name. I didn't even hear a gasp, just the continuing clink of silverware and the sound of Mark's boss starting another story. It was as if a ghost had just carried away the heart of their celebration, and no one had even noticed she was there in the first place. The November air was sharp on my cheeks as I pushed the front door open. It felt like a slap, but a clean one, a welcome one. The pan was heavy, the heat burning through the worn fabric of my mitts, but I didn't stop. I walked down the driveway and onto the street, my steps steady. A neighbor across the street, watering her mums, looked up at me, her expression a mixture of confusion and concern. An old woman carrying a 20-pound turkey down the sidewalk. I probably looked insane. I didn't care. I just gave her a small nod and kept walking. I walked to the end of the block, to the small lakeside cottage I still owned. It felt like a mile. My arms screamed in protest, but I held on, carrying that turkey like the last piece of my dignity, careful not to spill the juices that still bubbled at the bottom. Inside, everything smelled of cedar and memory. The air was still and cool. This was my home, the one my husband Robert and I had built, not with our hands, but with our lives. The one Claire convinced me to leave last year. "We'll take care of you, Mom," she'd said. I should have known better. Being taken care of is just a polite term for being put away. It means your life is now a task on someone else's to-do list. I placed the turkey on my own kitchen counter. The thud echoed in the silence. No voices, no screens, no one asking for more gravy. Just me. The quiet wasn't empty. It was full. It was mine. I made myself a plate. One of the old ones with blue flowers around the rim. The one Robert had bought at a flea market because he said it looked cheerful. I carved the best part of the breast, a thick, juicy slice, and spooned the rich pan drippings over it. I sat down at my own table, in my own chair. A chair that no one needed. A chair that was waiting for me. I ate slowly. The meat was perfect. The skin was crisp. The herbs I'd grown in a pot on Claire's back patio, the only gardening she'd allowed, had done their job. And for the first time in years, I tasted every single bite as well. I didn't heat it. I didn't fuss. I just ate it as it was, quietly, slowly, while the cottage held its breath around me. By 8, I'd made a list. Check the bank accounts, call the lawyer, go through the documents Claire helped organize last spring, make decisions. The list wasn't long, but it was real, and it was mine. I pulled the folder from the bookshelf, the one I'd marked House and Finances, and opened it on the kitchen table. Inside were receipts from renovations I'd paid for. Utility bills, always in Claire's name. Notes from her suggesting we streamline things, meaning shift control slowly but surely out of my hands. I remembered the day she convinced me to move my pension over to a joint account, just for simplicity. I'd thought I was being practical. That's how they get you, isn't it? They don't take everything all at once. They chip away until you don't even recognize what used to be yours. The next thing I did was open my laptop. The bank's website had been bookmarked long ago, though I rarely logged in. I'd left that to Claire too often, but not today. I reset the password, passed the security questions thankfully, still ones I had chosen, and there it was. My balance, still intact, still mine. I made a note to visit the branch in person. I wanted eyes to look into, not just screens. I wanted records printed, authorization forms reviewed. No more joint accounts, no more access for convenience. Just me, my name, my signature. It wasn't revenge, it was clarity. I looked up from my notes and saw the photo on the fridge, one of the few I hadn't packed away when I moved. Anna and I, standing in the garden with Lily between us, no more than 7 or 8. Her hands full of basil she'd yanked straight from the planter. We were laughing, all 3 of us. Not performing, not posing, just real. That laugh. I hadn't laughed like that in a long time. I picked up the phone and dialed Lily's number from memory. It rang twice before she answered. "Grandma?" Her voice hit me like warm light. "Hi, sweetheart." A pause. Then, "Are you okay?" Mom said. Well, she didn't say much, but she looked furious. I figured something happened. I smiled. Something did happen. I remembered I'm still alive. Lily was quiet for a moment, then let out a short laugh. "Well, that's one way to put it. I left," I said simply. "Last night, I took the turkey and I left." There was another pause, but no judgment, just a slow exhale. "Good," she said. "Good for you." I felt my throat tighten. "Would you like to come by sometime?" I asked. "I'll make lunch. Nothing fancy." "Tomorrow," she said quickly. "I mean, if that's okay. Tomorrow would be lovely." After we hung up, I walked through the cottage slowly. I hadn't really looked at it in a long time. The curtains I'd sewn myself before Claire was born. The chipped ceramic lamp I refused to replace. The bookshelf full of old paperbacks no one ever borrowed. Everything had a place. Everything held weight. I dusted. I polished. I opened windows. The cottage exhaled with me. At noon, I went to the backyard and stood by the raised beds Robert had built. The soil was dry, but not hopeless. The parsley was still holding on. A few stubborn marigolds bowed their yellow heads. I touched the wooden edge of the bed and let my fingers rest there. Claire had told me not to bother with the garden anymore. "It's too much for you, Mom. Just let it go." She didn't understand. You don't let go of the things that remind you who you are. You water them, even if your hands shake, even if your knees complain, even if no one else notices. The phone didn't ring again that day, and that was fine. Anna used to say that I was the strongest woman she knew. She'd say it when I fixed the washing machine myself, or when I held her father's hand as he took his last breath, or when I went back to my sewing work 3 days after his funeral because someone had to keep the lights on. Funny how that strength becomes invisible the older you get. You stop being the woman who carried the family on her back and become the woman people talk over, the one they pat on the hand, the one they tell to rest, to sit down, to stay out of the way. After Robert, the carpenter, died, I didn't crumble. I cooked, cleaned, paid the mortgage, and took on more sewing commissions. Claire was 21, freshly graduated, and itching to move out. Anna, still in high school, stayed close. She always had one foot in the real world, never too swept up in ambition to forget who raised her. Claire had drive, no doubt, but Anna had heart. I remember the first month after his death, how Claire kept saying, "You need to let someone help you," when what she meant was, "You're not doing this the way I think you should." She moved out a month later, said the house felt too heavy, that she needed air. Anna stayed. She helped with the bills when she could, worked part-time after school, and made me laugh when the nights got too quiet. I used to catch her sitting on the porch, talking to the stars like they were old friends. She was never in a rush to leave. Even when she got married, even when she had Lily, she made time. That kind of love doesn't shout. It shows up. And when the cancer came, she faced it the same way she faced everything, gently, but with her eyes open. She called me before every chemo appointment, not because she needed advice, but because she knew I needed to hear her voice. When she died, Claire told me, "You have to be strong now for Lily." But her voice held no softness. It felt more like an assignment than a comfort. Lily was just 12. She moved in with Claire because I was too old to raise a teenager. I wanted to fight it, to say I could still be a mother, even if my knees ached and my hands trembled some mornings. But I didn't. I let it happen. And maybe that was the first real surrender. Not to age, but to doubt. The following years passed in a blur of compromises. I sold my car. "You don't need it anymore, Mom," Claire said. "We'll take you anywhere you need to go." Except they never did. I stopped hosting dinners. "It's easier at our place," she insisted. I stopped tending the garden beds. "Your back can't handle that." I stopped decorating for holidays. "Let us do it. You just rest." Each time I let go of something, I told myself it was just practical. But practicality has a sharp edge. You only realize how deep it cuts when you try to reach for something and find it's no longer yours. Claire isn't cruel, not in the ways people expect cruelty to look. She doesn't raise her voice. She doesn't hit. Her tools are silence, suggestion, dismissal. She's a master at minimizing. If I said something hurt me, she'd blink slowly and say, "Oh, I didn't mean it that way," as if my hurt was inconvenient, as if my feelings were a translation error. That's what made last night different. "You can eat in the kitchen," she'd said, not with malice, but with efficiency, with a coldness so practiced, it passed for logic. I wasn't part of the celebration. I was part of the staff. And when I stood up, took the turkey, and left, she didn't stop me. Not even a murmur. Just silence, which told me everything. This morning, after my tea, I opened another box I hadn't looked into in years. Inside were Anna's letters. Real letters. Handwritten, sealed, stamped. She believed in paper. "Screens lie," she used to say. "Ink tells the truth." I read 3 of them. One was about Lily's first piano recital, how nervous she'd been, how her hands shook before the first note, and how she smiled afterward like she'd climbed a mountain. Another was just a list of things Anna was grateful for that week. The third was harder. It was written after a scan, the one that showed the cancer had spread. "I'm not afraid of dying," she wrote. "I'm afraid of being forgotten." I folded the letter and held it close. "I haven't forgotten you, baby," I whispered. "I never will." I spent the afternoon writing a new letter, this one to Lily. Not an apology, not a complaint, just a story. A slice of memory from when she was small, and I taught her how to sew a straight line on my old machine. Her tiny hands covered in thread, her face stern with concentration. I ended it with, "You were always paying attention. I see that now. I just want you to know. So was I." I sealed the envelope, wrote her name, and placed it by the door. Tomorrow, I'd give it to her in person. There's a kind of silence that comes not from peace, but from absence. That was the kind filling Claire's house the morning after I left. I imagined it while I boiled water for tea. How the children whispered over cereal, unsure why Grandma's chair was empty. How Claire's husband glanced at her, waiting for an explanation. and how she, with all her talent for deflection, probably said nothing at all. Silence is easier than admitting your mother walked out on Thanksgiving with the main course under her arm. I sat on my porch with my tea, wrapped in an old cardigan Anna had given me the Christmas before Lily was born. The elbows were thinned, one pocket coming loose at the seam, but it still smelled faintly of her favorite vanilla lotion. I watched a squirrel dart across the fence, then freeze mid-motion. Sensing I was watching, I smiled. I liked the company. Around 10, I heard Lily's voice before I saw her. "Grandma?" I stood up too quickly and felt the familiar pinch in my right knee. "Back here, sweetheart." She came around the side of the house holding a brown paper bag, her hair tied up, her cheeks flushed. "I brought pastries," she said, "from that little place near the bookstore, the one you used to love." I nearly laughed. "Used to? I still do. Come in." We sat at the kitchen table with warm cinnamon twists between us. Lily poured the tea like she'd seen me do it 100 times. She probably had. She didn't ask questions at first, and I didn't rush to explain. We just ate slowly, like we had time. "I saw Mom's face last night," she said finally. "When she came back to the table, she looked hollow, like she didn't expect you to actually go." I sipped my tea. "Neither did I, until I did." "I'm glad you did." She looked down. "I wanted to say something, but it didn't feel like my place." "It wasn't," I said, "and yet, here you are." She smiled, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. "She's not a bad person," Lily said quietly, "but she treats you like a favor she's doing for the universe. Like she expects applause for letting you exist in her house." I didn't say anything. "I know that sounds harsh," she added. "No," I said. "It sounds accurate." We sat in that quiet agreement for a while. Then she pulled something out of her bag. A set of house keys. "I made copies," she said. "For emergencies, sure, but also so I can come over whenever. You know, if you want." I took the keys, weighed them in my palm, 3 of them, one with a pink cover. "Do I get a say in the keychain?" I teased. Lily grinned. "That's non-negotiable." We talked a while longer about school, about her job at the library, about the neighbor's cat that kept getting into her apartment through the fire escape. She said its name was Clementine, and it had opinions about everything. When she left, I stood on the porch until her car turned the corner. Then I went back inside, sat at the table, and held the keys a little longer before placing them in the drawer where I kept the flashlight, extra batteries, and my old recipe cards. I thought I'd feel more alone, but I didn't. I felt contained, like I had stepped back into a shape that had always been mine. The rest of the day passed in small, deliberate motions. I gathered laundry, sorted it by hand, washed the dishes even though there were only a few, and checked the mail even though I hadn't been expecting anything. And then, late in the afternoon, I did something I hadn't done in over a year. I opened my sewing box. The lid creaked. Inside, buttons, threads, fabric scraps, old pins dulled with time. I pulled out a piece of soft blue cotton I'd bought on impulse 2 years ago, planning to make Lily a summer dress I never started. My fingers moved slower now, but the muscle memory returned. I didn't need to finish anything, just begin. Just remind my hands they still knew how to create, not just maintain. Outside, the sky turned that gentle, bruised purple it gets just before night. And still, the phone didn't ring. It was Lily who first asked, "Do you think Mom even knows who you are anymore?" We were sitting in the living room, a pot of tea between us, sunlight slanting in through the lace curtains. She hadn't meant it as an attack, just a question, a genuine one, but it landed like a stone. I stirred my tea, not because it needed it, but because my hands needed something to do. I think she knows the version of me she decided to keep, I said. Lily tilted her head. What does that mean? It means, I began slowly. She remembers the woman who packed her lunches and signed her field trip slips, the one who kept her clothes clean and her bed made. She remembers me through usefulness, through chores, through routine, but not through joy, not through the things I loved before I became mom full-time. Lily leaned forward, her chin resting on her hand. So, what did you love? The question was simple, but I hadn't answered it in years. I loved designing clothes, I said after a pause, making patterns from scratch. I had a small business for a while before I met your grandfather. And I loved old jazz records and lemon cookies and swimming at the quarry on the hottest days of July. I stopped, surprised at the sudden tightness in my chest. And I loved Sunday mornings when the house was quiet and I'd sit by the window with a book and nobody needed anything from me. Lily smiled softly. I never knew that. Of course you didn't. Nobody ever asked. She looked like she was about to speak, but then her phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen, winced, and turned it face down without answering. Your mother? She nodded. She's been intense. Keeps asking where I am, if I've checked in with you, like she suddenly cares again. She doesn't like when things move without her. Control freak. She doesn't think she is, I said. That's the problem. She thinks she's saving people. She thinks she's protecting the family from embarrassment, from disorder, from, God forbid, discomfort. Lily raised an eyebrow. By telling her own mother to wait in the kitchen until everyone else had eaten? I shrugged. That's the kind of comfort she believes in. Hierarchy, performance. She wants her life to look clean on the outside, no matter what mold grows underneath. Lily shook her head. I don't want to turn into that. You won't, I said, reaching for her hand. Come, you ask questions. You show up. She squeezed my fingers gently. That afternoon, we went for a walk just around the neighborhood. The air smelled like damp leaves and chimney smoke. Lily carried a paper bag of cookies she'd picked up on the way, and we shared them as we walked. Do you ever regret it? She asked suddenly. Everything you gave up. I thought for a while. The sidewalk cracked beneath our feet. A crow called from a wire overhead. I regret thinking it would be repaid. Lily didn't answer right away. Then she said, That's fair. When she dropped me off later, she hugged me tighter than usual. I watched her car disappear down the road, then went back inside and locked the door. Not from fear, but from choice. I liked knowing who I was letting in. That night, I sat by the radio and found a station that still played jazz. Coltrane, specifically. I closed my eyes and remembered the smell of waxed floors, the weight of someone's hand on my waist, the thrill of turning in step with a rhythm larger than both of us. I didn't dance, not really, just swayed in place. But it was enough. The next morning, Claire came to the house. I saw her through the window, standing stiff on the porch, holding something in her arms. I didn't move. I let her knock twice. Then I opened the door. Hi, Mom, she said. Her voice was too bright, too brittle. I nodded. Claire, she held out a foil-covered dish. I brought your Tupperware back and some of the leftover ham. I looked at it and didn't reach for it. I have food, I said. Her smile faltered. I just thought. Why are you really here? She bristled. Is it so strange for me to visit? Yes, I said plainly. She looked past me into the house. Lily's been avoiding me. She's been here. A pause. Claire took a breath. Mom, I know things have been tense, but you have to understand, there were guests, expectations. I didn't mean to be disrespectful. You just didn't care if you were. That's not fair. No, I said. It's not, but it's true. We stood there for a few seconds, the air between us thick with things that had never been said. She held out the dish again. I didn't move. I made a turkey, I said quietly. Claire blinked. What? I made a turkey the night I left. I sat in my own kitchen, at my own table, and I ate it while it was still warm. She looked confused, like she couldn't decide if I was angry or proud. I don't need your leftovers, Claire, I said gently. Then I closed the door. I didn't lock it after she left. I didn't need to. Some boundaries are stronger than deadbolts. I stood in the hallway for a moment, holding on to the quiet. My hands didn't shake. My breath didn't catch. The old fear, the one that says you're being ungrateful or she meant well, was gone. It had withered sometime between the front door and the first bite of that turkey I ate alone, and like anything dead, it no longer held power. Later, I wrapped the dish she brought in a kitchen towel and walked it down the street to the church donation freezer. They take food quietly there. No questions, no paperwork, just a kind soul making sure nothing goes to waste. I placed the ham inside, left the Tupperware, and walked home without looking back. By the time I returned, the kettle was still warm. That's when I knew what I had to do next. For years, I'd let Claire handle things. Bills, online accounts, renewals. It started small. A reminder to pay the electricity, a suggestion to link our phone plans. Then came the bank accounts. She'd convinced me to move my pension to a joint account in case something happens. Then the automatic payments began. School fees for the kids, a portion of the groceries, even a monthly household help contribution that I never actually saw itemized. I didn't argue. I told myself I was being helpful, that families support each other, that she'd done so much for me by letting me live with them. Now all I could think was how cleverly she'd built the cage, not out of cruelty, no, just entitlement, quiet, subtle, and constant. I opened the drawer where I'd kept my records before moving in with Claire. My name was still on all the accounts. The bank had changed its logo since I'd last handled things, but the core was the same. I called the branch directly. Yes, Mrs. Sterling, the young man said after confirming my identity. You're still the primary holder on the savings and the joint checking. How can I help? I'd like to make some changes, I said, but I'd rather do them in person. Of course. Do you need any accommodations? We have assisted services if I can walk. Thank you. He hesitated. We're open until 5. I'll be there in an hour. I hung up and changed into slacks and a navy sweater. Something sturdy, something mine. I pinned my silver beret into place, the one Anna always said made me look sharp and settled. Fractions and pad cons. Then I picked up my worn leather bag, slipped my notepad inside, and walked to the corner to catch the bus. It felt good to wait at the stop. Normal, grounded, nobody chauffeuring me around like luggage. Nobody calling to ask where I was going. Just me, out in the world, doing something for myself. At the bank, the same young man who'd answered the phone greeted me at the counter. His name tag read, Kevin. He smiled politely but looked slightly uneasy, like I might start crying or complaining at any moment. That's what they expect from women my age, tears or confusion. I gave him neither. I'd like to remove an authorized user from 2 accounts, I said, laying my ID flat on the counter. He blinked. Yes, of course. If you'll step into one of our offices, I'll get the forms. 10 minutes later, I sat at a polished desk, signing papers with steady hands. Would you also like to revoke online access permissions? He asked. Yes, and automatic transfers. All of them. He paused, his eyes flicking to the screen. There's a recurring transfer of $450 every month to a school tuition account. I know, I said. Cancel it. Another pause. There are also smaller ones. Subscriptions, home services, some rideshare activity. Do you recognize these? No. Cancel everything. He nodded and began typing. You'll receive confirmation emails later today. I have a new email address, I said, handing him the slip of paper where I'd written it that morning. Send them here. His fingers hesitated again. Mrs. Sterling, if I may, this is a significant change. Would you like us to flag the account, in case someone tries to re-establish access without your consent? I looked at him squarely. Yes, flag it. When it was done, he stood and walked me to the door. Anything else I can do for you today? I smiled. You've already done more than you know. Outside, the wind had picked up. I pulled my sweater close, but I wasn't cold. Not really. My body was humming, not from adrenaline, but from certainty. For the first time in a long time, I knew exactly whose name was on what, and that was only the beginning. The lawyer's office smelled like lemon polish and old paper. I'd been there once before, years ago, when Robert and I drew up our wills after his first heart scare. The building was the same. Narrow hallways, scuffed molding, but the receptionist was new, and the chairs in the waiting area were now faux leather instead of velvet. The kind of change no one talks about, but you feel all the same. Mrs. Sterling, the receptionist smiled. You're here to see Mr. Abrams. I nodded. He's expecting me. She led me down a short corridor and into a small office with tall windows. The man behind the desk stood when I entered, grayer than I remembered, but his handshake was still strong. Margaret, he said, motioning to the chair across from him. It's been a while. Yes, too long. He sat and folded his hands. What brings you in? I didn't hesitate. I'd like to revise my will, and I want to set up a trust for my granddaughter. He blinked once. All right. There was no judgment in his voice, just calm professionalism, which was exactly what I needed. You remember Anna? Of course. She's gone now. Been gone a while. I'm sorry. I nodded once. She left a daughter, Lily. I want to ensure that whatever I have left goes to her, not to my other daughter. He didn't flinch. We can do that. I also want to protect those assets while I'm still alive. I added, Lily's young, but I trust her more than anyone else. I don't want Claire or anyone else having access to anything in my name. Mr. Abrams opened a legal pad and began taking notes. We can create a living trust. You'll retain control as trustee, but designate Lily as the beneficiary. That way, when the time comes, she'll inherit without going through probate. Good. I'd also recommend revoking any financial power of attorney that currently names Claire. Already done? I said. The bank's been notified. Her access is gone. He glanced up, his lips twitching into something between a smile and a nod of approval. I want the trust to include the cottage, I continued. All the accounts I still hold, any investments, everything. That's doable. We'll draw up a schedule of assets and transfer ownership into the trust entity. You'll still live in the home, use the funds, but legally, the trust owns it. Perfect. He looked at me for a moment. His pen paused above the paper. May I ask what prompted this change, Margaret? I took a breath. She told me to eat in the kitchen after everyone else was served. His brow furrowed, then smoothed again. He didn't need the details. The sentence was enough. I see. She's been managing things for years. Not badly, but not kindly either. I let it happen. I thought I was being helpful. But lately, I've started remembering that I'm still a person, not a duty, not a wallet with a cardigan. He made a few more notes. And I don't want this to be a punishment, I added. I just want to be clear about where I stand. 1. I want Lily to have what I built, not what someone else siphoned off. She'll have it. The appointment took another hour. By the time we finished reviewing forms and outlining contingencies, I felt steadier than I had in months. As he slid the draft papers into a folder, Mr. Abrams looked at me with quiet respect. Most people wait too long, he said, until they've already been drained. I waited long enough. He stood to walk me out. When everything's finalized, I'll call you, he said. But you'll need to come in again for signatures. I'll be here. Outside, the sky had turned slate gray, and the air smelled like rain. I didn't rush. I walked past the pharmacy, past the bakery, past the tiny park with the rusted swing set. I sat on a bench under the trees and just breathed for a while. There's something strange about reclaiming control after giving it away for so long. It doesn't feel triumphant. It feels quiet, like adjusting your posture after years of leaning the wrong way. My phone buzzed. A message from Lily. "Everything okay, Grandma?" I typed back. "It's starting to be." Then I slid the phone into my pocket and listened to the wind in the leaves. The papers were ready within a week. I returned to Mr. Abrams's office on a Thursday morning. The sky was clear for once, sunlight pooling like gold on the sidewalks, but the wind still had a bite. I wore my wool coat, the one Anna bought me the year she got her promotion. She said it made me look like someone who doesn't ask for permission. I folded it neatly over the back of the chair in Mr. Abrams's office as he laid out the documents across the desk. "There's the will revision," he began, tapping each page gently. "Here's the trust agreement. Lily is named as sole beneficiary. You're the trustee. The cottage, accounts, and investment funds are listed in the Schedule A attachment. And here," he paused, "is the formal revocation of financial power of attorney." I looked at the thick envelope marked Claire Sterling. It was already addressed and stamped. "She'll receive a copy," he confirmed, "along with the cease letter. She'll have no legal standing to act on your behalf moving forward." I took the pen. My hands didn't shake. I signed every page, slowly, deliberately, watching the ink curve behind me, like a trail I could finally see forming in real time. When we finished, Mr. Abrams gathered everything and slipped the signed documents into a large binder. "That's it," he said. "You're no longer operating under assumption or habit. Everything's legally yours again." I nodded. "Good. There is one more thing," he said, opening a small drawer. "Do you want to include a medical directive? Someone to speak for you if you can't?" I didn't hesitate. "Lily, she's under 30, he warned gently. "That's fine by law, but emotionally, she's the only one who still asks what I want." He nodded and slid the form across the table. We finished in under 20 minutes. When I stood to leave, Mr. Abrams offered me the binder. "Keep this somewhere safe and let Lily know where it is." "I will." "And Margaret." I turned. "You're not just reclaiming things, you're protecting them. There's a difference." I nodded. "That's exactly what I'm doing." I took the long way home. I passed Claire's neighborhood and didn't turn in. I passed the school where Lily once played violin in the 3rd grade concert. I passed the hardware store where Robert used to buy nails he didn't need, just to talk to the owner. When I reached my cottage, I felt it in a new way. Not as a burden, not as a museum, but as shelter. A stronghold. Mine. I placed the binder in the drawer with the emergency flashlight and the spare checkbook. Then I sat at the kitchen table and wrote Lily a letter. Not dramatic, not emotional, just instructions. Where the binder was, who to call, what to do if and when. When I finished, I tucked the letter into an envelope and wrote her name in block letters across the front. Then I placed it under the old cookie jar, the one she always lifts when she visits, as if I might have left something sweet inside. I stood by the window for a while, sipping tea, watching the late autumn light shift across the yard. The phone rang once, then again. I let it go. 5 minutes later, a text came through. "Claire, we need to talk. It's important." I deleted it without reading further. Later that evening, as the sun dipped behind the rooftops, I pulled out my planner and started making lists. Not lists of chores, lists of things I wanted. A new pair of walking shoes, a small raised garden bed for spring, a trip just a weekend somewhere with water. Not big things, not fancy things, just mine. That night, for the first time in years, I locked the door from the inside, not out of fear, but as a quiet declaration. I was home. Claire didn't knock this time. She rang the bell once, then again, sharper, longer. I waited, finishing my tea. 1, 2, Bryce. When I opened the door, she stood stiffly on the porch, her arms crossed, her face tight. "We need to talk," she said. I didn't move. Her eyes narrowed. "Don't play dumb, Mother. You've revoked everything. I got the letter from the lawyer, the trust, the will. You cut me out entirely." I stepped back and opened the door wider. "Then you already have the answer." She brushed past me into the living room, uninvited. She always walked like the house owed her its walls. "Why now?" she asked, spinning to face me. "Why, after all this time? You live under my roof for over a year, and suddenly I'm the villain?" I sat in my chair by the window, calm. "I don't live under your roof anymore. You stayed there for free," she snapped. "We took care of you." "No," I said. "I cooked. I cleaned. I picked up your children from school. I paid for half your bills. That wasn't care. That was an arrangement. And I don't do arrangements that erase me." Claire blinked. For a second, her mouth moved but made no sound. She hadn't expected clarity. She'd come prepared for guilt. "You're being dramatic," she said finally. "No, I'm being exact." She started pacing. "You're going to leave everything to Lily? She's 22. She doesn't know anything about finances. She'll learn. I should have been part of that conversation. I should have." "You had years," I interrupted. "Years to treat me like a person, not a burden." "You didn't." Claire stopped pacing. "I didn't mean to hurt you. You just didn't care if you did." She flinched, but I held her gaze. "All these years," I said quietly, "you thought I wouldn't notice. You told me when to speak, when to sit, when to eat. You dressed it up as concern, but it was always control." She crossed her arms again, defensive now. "I was trying to keep things manageable." "For whom?" Her silence told me everything. After a while, she sat down across from me, her voice softening. "You could have said something sooner." "I did. You didn't hear it. Or maybe you did and ignored it." Her jaw tightened again. "You've made me out to be some cold monster. I didn't make you anything. I just stopped lying about how it felt." She exhaled hard and rubbed her forehead. "So, that's it? You're just done with me?" I looked at her, my daughter, a woman I had fed and clothed and protected, and I felt no hatred, just exhaustion. "No," I said gently. "I'm not done with you, but I am done living under your conditions." She didn't speak after that. We sat in silence for a long time, the afternoon sun painting sharp lines across the floor. Finally, she stood. "Do you want me to go?" I nodded. "I do." Claire looked like she might say more, but then she turned, walked to the door, and let herself out. The door shut quietly behind her. I didn't cry. I didn't feel victorious. I felt space, the kind that used to belong to me, the kind I'd forgotten how to breathe in. Later that evening, Lily called. "How are you?" she asked. "Better," I said. "Clearer." She paused. "She came by, didn't she?" "Yes." "Did it help?" I thought for a moment. It helped me remember that boundaries aren't cruel. They're necessary. Lily didn't say anything, but I could hear the warmth in her breath. "Good," she whispered. "That's good." We didn't talk long. We didn't need to. Sometimes it's not about what you say. It's about finally being heard. The next few days came with noise. Not the kind you hear, but the kind that fills your phone. Missed calls, voicemails with polite urgency. Texts that started with, "Mom, I think we should talk," and ended with, "This has gone too far." Some from Claire, a few from her husband, Mark, who never used to speak to me directly, unless the car insurance lapsed or a casserole needed returning. The messages blurred together after a while. Apologies wrapped in expectation, worry disguised as control. And underneath them all, a single thread. They were losing access, and they didn't know how to function without it. I didn't answer. It wasn't revenge. It was space. I left my phone on the kitchen counter and spent mornings on the porch with a blanket and a book. I'd reread the same paragraph 4 times, not because I couldn't focus, but because I liked the rhythm of the words. I'd forgotten how books felt in the hand, how they changed the texture of time. Around noon each day, I'd walk not far, just through the neighborhood, past the hardware store, past the post office where Mr. Ferdinand. Duncan still flirted shamelessly despite being 92 and nearly deaf. Sometimes I'd pick up lemons or fresh bread. Sometimes I'd buy nothing at all, just to remember what it felt like to move freely through a place without purpose. The cottage stayed warm. I baked for myself, small batches. 2 muffins, not 12. 1 pot of soup, not a vat. I ate at the table, not in front of a screen, not standing near the sink, and always from a real plate. The redder, that mattered to me. On the 3rd evening, the doorbell rang. Not Claire, not Mark. It was Toby, Lily's younger cousin, Claire's son, 16, all long limbs and nervous energy. He held a paper bag and wouldn't look me in the eye. "Mom made me bring this," he said, thrusting the bag forward. "It's some food, I think, and a card." I took it, more for him than for myself. "You want to come in?" He hesitated, then nodded. Inside, he stood awkwardly in the hallway while I set the bag on the counter and peeked inside. Chicken in plastic containers, a slice of pie. The card was unsigned. Toby cleared his throat. "I think she's scared." "Of what?" "Of not being forgiven." I nodded. "And you?" He shrugged. "I'm just confused. You were always there. Now you're not. That's what happens when people stop seeing you." He looked down at his sneakers. "Lily says you're not mad, that you're tired." "I am." He nodded again. "I liked it when you lived with us," he said, "even if Mom always made it seem like you were in the way." I smiled. "Thank you." He looked around the cottage, taking in the photos, the quiet. "It's different here. It smells real." That made me laugh. "That's probably the onions." He grinned. Before he left, he paused by the door. "Are we still family?" I looked at him, so young, still growing into his voice. "Always," I said. "But family and boundaries aren't enemies." He frowned. "What's that mean?" "It means you're allowed to say no to people you love." "Oh." He stood there for a second longer, then stepped forward and hugged me, awkward and quick, but real. After he left, I sat at the table with the card. No signature, no note, just a blank interior with one typed word on the front. Sorry, it didn't feel like enough. But I wasn't waiting for it to be. That night, I didn't turn the phone off. I just turned the volume down. The sound of my own breathing was enough. Claire waited a full week before trying again. This time it came by mail. A pale blue envelope, her handwriting on the front. She always had neat script, sharp and slanted like she was still trying to impress a teacher. I opened it at the kitchen table, a knife sliding easily through the fold. Inside, a card with gold trim, the kind people send for holidays or polite condolences. No emotion, just elegance. The message inside was short. Let's start fresh. Come for dinner. Sunday. Just family. Just us. Love, Claire. I read it twice. Then, I placed it back in the envelope and set it aside. I didn't need time to think. I already knew the answer. When Sunday came, I didn't go. I didn't call. I didn't explain. I simply made my own dinner: roasted carrots, a piece of fish, rice with lemon zest, and ate it by the window as the sky went soft and gold. Around 7, the phone rang. Claire. I let it go to voicemail. Then it rang again and again. Finally, I picked up. Her voice was clipped, too steady. You got the card. Yes, we waited for you. I know. I made the lamb, your recipe. I stirred my tea. That's nice. She exhaled sharply. Are you punishing me? No, I said. I'm declining. She didn't understand. I could hear it in the silence. It's just dinner, Mom. It's never just dinner with you. A pause. I'm trying to make things right. No, I said. You're trying to reset the board back to how it was, back to what was comfortable for you. But I'm not playing anymore. Her voice cracked, just slightly. Lily says you've changed. She's right. I don't know what you want from me. Nothing, I said. That's the point. Silence stretched long between us. Then, in a smaller voice, she said, I miss you. I believe you. More silence. But I won't go back, I added. I won't sit at a table where I'm asked to earn my place. I won't trade my presence for permission. Her voice hardened. You think you're better than us now? No, I said. I think I finally remember that I matter. She didn't respond, and I didn't fill the gap. Eventually, she said, I don't know what else to do. You don't have to do anything, I said gently. Just stop expecting me to return to who I was when I forgot myself. She ended the call, not with anger, just with a kind of finality, a door she didn't know how to open and wasn't ready to walk through. I sat there a long time, listening to the quiet. Not lonely, not triumphant, just still. Later, I opened the drawer, took out the blue envelope, and tore it in half, then again, and once more. The scraps fluttered into the trash like dried petals. I went to bed early. No dreams, just rest. And in the morning, I woke without dread. I signed the lease on a Tuesday. It was a small apartment, 2 rooms and a kitchen, on the 2nd floor of a quiet building near the park. Nothing grand, nothing polished, but the windows faced east, and the light poured in like honey each morning. That mattered more than granite countertops ever could. The landlord, Mr. Patel, was kind. He helped carry the boxes up the narrow stairs and showed me where the breaker panel was, just in case. When I asked about painting the kitchen cabinets, he shrugged and said, As long as you don't pick black, I trust you. I chose sage green. Lily helped me settle in. We made a day of it. We unpacked slowly, drinking iced tea from mismatched mugs and laughing when we found things I didn't even remember owning. She hung a small framed print above the sink, a lemon tree, soft and faded. It looks like you, she said. Rooted but still growing. I smiled. That's nicer than being called hardy. We spent the afternoon arranging the bookshelves. Anna's letters went into a wooden box that now lived on the side table, close enough to touch. By evening, Lily had to leave. Before she did, she placed a plant, a trailing pothos, on the windowsill. "Every woman needs a plant," she said. "It's proof you can still nurture something." After she left, I sat on the couch and listened to the new quiet, different from the silence in Claire's house. This one didn't press. It welcomed. It asked nothing. I made a simple dinner: sautéed spinach, a boiled egg, toast. I ate it slowly, watching the shadows climb the opposite wall. No one asked why there weren't more sides. No one criticized the softness of the yolk. The next morning, I met my neighbor. Her name was Ruth, 83, and she walked with a cane that had floral stickers all over the shaft. "You're the new one," she said, eyeing me like a shopkeeper does a fresh shipment. "I suppose I am." She nodded toward my door. "Don't put out your trash before 5. They'll fine us. And the lady in 2B feeds the squirrels, but don't tell management. I like her too much to see her evicted." I smiled. "Thanks for the warning." She leaned in, lowering her voice. "You divorced?" "No, widowed." She tilted her head. "Then what brings you here?" I didn't hesitate. I remembered I'm allowed to live on my own terms. Her lips twitched. "Well, it's about time." We stood in the hallway, talking for 20 minutes, about arthritis, old movies, and which market had the best produce. She reminded me a little of myself, sharp when she needed to be, but kind underneath. A woman who'd weathered more than she let on. That afternoon, I rearranged the silverware drawer, not because it was wrong, just because I could. I placed the forks in the front, the knives at the back. It made no logical sense, but it pleased me. Later, I took a walk around the block, just once, enough to feel the air on my skin, enough to feel like part of the day. And when I returned, there were no expectations waiting for me. Just the warm hum of the radiator, just the lemon tree above the sink, just me, in my space, with no one asking what I was doing there. And for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel like I was visiting my own life. The envelope was cream-colored and addressed in wide, loopy cursive. I nearly tossed it with the flyers and coupon mailers. Only the return address stopped me. Helen Carter. I hadn't heard that name in over 30 years. We'd lived 2 houses apart when the girls were little. She had twin boys, both loud and fast, and always tracking mud through her kitchen. We used to sit on her back steps, drinking coffee while the kids turned the backyard into a war zone. She smoked menthols and wore her hair in a braid that hung down her back like a rope. She'd moved after her husband got transferred to Idaho. We promised to write. We didn't. I opened the letter at the kitchen table, already steeping tea. The paper was thick, the ink a little faded. "Maggie," it began, "I saw your name in the church bulletin. They said you'd spoken at a memorial fundraiser for Anna last spring. I couldn't believe it. I'm sorry it took me so long to find the right words, but when I saw your name again, I knew I had to reach out." She remembered Anna, remembered her laugh, remembered her drawing pictures on the sidewalk with chalk and insisting they were inventions. She wrote about her boys, one now a teacher, the other working in forestry. She had grandkids, a dog, a new hip. She said she was slower now, but not done yet. Then, near the end, I still remember the woman who danced barefoot in the rain on your 40th birthday. The one who said, "If the world's already wet, you may as well move with it. I hope you've kept dancing, and if not, well, it's never too late." I put the letter down and felt something soft and old press into my chest. Not sadness, not quite nostalgia, just recognition. I had forgotten that woman. She wasn't a fantasy or a version of myself from a dream. She was real. She had lived here once, in this body, with these hands, and I'd buried her under years of, "Is dinner ready?" And "Can you pick up the kids?" And "You're just being sensitive, Mom." I stood up, crossed the kitchen, and opened the drawer where I kept old tea towels. At the very back, folded tight, was a CD Lily had burned for me years ago. I am spree. Grandma's Jazz, written in silver marker. I didn't even know if it would play anymore, but I pulled out the old stereo, dusted it off, and tried. It crackled, then caught. Nina Simone's voice filled the room, low and deep, like honey turning in a spoon. I stood by the window, my arms crossed, just listening. Then I let myself sway, just a little. The floor creaked beneath me, and my knees didn't love the movement, but I moved anyway, in my socks, with no one watching, with no performance. It wasn't dancing, not really, but maybe it was close enough. I wrote Helen back that same afternoon. I told her thank you for remembering, for seeing, for naming the version of me I had forgotten. I told her about Anna, about Lily, about the turkey I carried out the front door, like an offering to my old self. I didn't mention Claire. I didn't need to. I ended the letter with a line she'd once said to me after I'd spilled coffee on a new dress and nearly cried over it. "You're allowed to be messy. Just don't pretend it's someone else's mess." I'd never forgotten that, even if I forgot everything else. When I walked to the mailbox, the wind picked up, cold and fast, but not punishing. The lemon tree print fluttered slightly when I came back inside. I touched the frame lightly. "I remember you," I said quietly, and I did. Lily came over on a Friday. No warning, no text, just a soft knock and her face behind the frosted glass. "I brought mushrooms," she said, holding up a brown paper bag. "And those little onions you like." "I was just about to make soup," I said. "Perfect," she smiled. "I'll chop." We didn't rush. The kitchen wasn't large, but we moved around each other easily. I showed her where I kept the knives, still sharp, still familiar. She peeled onions with practiced hands, her eyes blinking from the sting. "I forgot how strong these are," she muttered. "That's how you know they're honest," I said. She laughed and wiped her eyes. I cleaned the mushrooms gently with a towel. No soaking, no shortcuts. She watched for a moment, then mimicked me. "Mom always scrubs them under the faucet. Your mother never had patience for mushrooms." Lily didn't argue. She just nodded. We worked in comfortable quiet, broken only by the bubbling of the pot. The smell filled the apartment, earthy, savory, warm. She found bowls in the cabinet without asking, set the table without fuss. When we sat down, neither of us reached for our phones. She tasted the soup and closed her eyes. "God, Grandma, this is perfect," I smiled. "It's just soup." "No," she said. "It's yours. That's the difference." We ate slowly. She dipped her bread into the broth and let it soak before each bite. When the bowls were nearly empty, she looked up. "Do you think I'll end up like her?" There was no bitterness in her voice, just the question. Bare, genuine. "No," I said. "You already asked the question." She never could. Lily toyed with her spoon. She's trying again, sending messages, telling me she wants to talk. "Do you want to?" She thought for a long moment, then shook her head. "Not right now. I just don't trust what she wants." "You don't owe her more than you have to give." She looked relieved. Not because I gave her permission, but because I'd said it aloud. After dinner, we washed dishes together. She dried. I rinsed. "I like it here." she said. It feels honest. That's the second time you've used that word tonight. Yeah, she said, smiling. I think I'm craving it. When we finished, she didn't rush to leave. She wandered into the living room, sat on the floor with her back against the couch. I joined her. I used to think you were just quiet, she said. But now, I think you were just careful. I nodded. I had to be. Why? Because when you grow up in a world that doesn't ask what you think, you learn to watch first, to measure. And now? Now I'm learning to answer before I'm asked. Lily leaned her head back, resting it against the cushions. I want to be like that, she said. You already are. We sat a long while without talking. Eventually, she stood, pulled on her coat, and kissed my cheek. Thank you, she whispered, for all of this. Come back next week, I said. We'll try up high. Deal. After she left, I cleaned the counter, wiped the stove, and folded the dish towel over the sink. The apartment smelled like garlic and thyme, like effort and ease. I poured myself a small glass of wine and sat by the window. Outside, a street lamp flickered. The air looked like velvet, thick, quiet, soft. I didn't think of Claire. I thought of Lily. I thought of soup and salt, and how some things, once tended properly, don't need saving, just space and time. There's a moment, just before dawn, when the world holds its breath. Grant, the sky isn't light yet, but it isn't dark either. The shadows soften, even the wind seems to pause. That's when I like to walk now. Just a short loop down to the corner, past the bakery that opens too early, then back again. The air is crisp, and the sidewalks are still damp from the night. Sometimes I see Ruth from down the hall. She walks slower these days, but she still waves. The morning I turned 80, I found a small note taped to my door. Happy birthday, Margaret. You remind me who I want to become. No name, but I knew it was Lily. I didn't need flowers or fanfare. That note was enough. I made myself pancakes that morning, just 2 with a little butter, a drizzle of syrup, and half a banana. I ate them slowly at the table, sunlight warming the floor by my feet. Later, I opened the drawer where the binder lived. I hadn't touched it in weeks, but I pulled it out, placed it on the table, and added one last letter, short, clear, folded once. It read, Lily, what I have is yours, not because of blood, but because of kindness. You never asked me to be smaller. You just met me where I stood. That is love. That is legacy. Don't let anyone teach you otherwise. I placed it behind the will and closed the binder. That afternoon, I sat on my small balcony and watched the light move across the street. Nothing extraordinary happened. A mail truck passed. A boy on a bicycle wobbled past, his backpack nearly tipping him over. The world, unbothered by my peace, kept going. I wasn't waiting anymore. Not for apologies, not for understanding, not for the version of motherhood I never got to grow into. I had enough. I had Lily. I had mornings and music and the scent of soup simmering just for me. Sometimes healing isn't a wave. It's a quiet return to yourself. And if you've been reading this, if you've ever felt small in a house you helped build, or quiet in a life you once led loud, let this be your permission. You don't need anyone's blessing to come back to yourself. You just need to begin. So begin now. And if this story found you, share it. Leave a comment. Pass it to another woman who needs reminding. Your worth was never up for debate.